Let's talk about Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, potentially one of the most anticipated movies of the year, of the decade, heck, even of the century. Was this film overhyped, or did it land at just the right time? And let's talk about how The Odyssey is proof that giving a competent director the reins and trusting their process will yield absolutely incredible results. Hi, I'm Andrew. I'm a film director. I've directed a feature film and over 12 short films. I love movies, and I'm here to help you find movies that you will love and learn a little bit more about the film industry. This is your spoiler warning here. There will be mild spoilers for The Odyssey coming up. The Odyssey follows Odysseus as he attempts to travel home after the Trojan War and the events of the Iliad. The film goes between his point of view as he is struggling to make it home and his wife and son Penelope and Telemachus, who are dealing with the suitors who are trying to win Penelope's hand in marriage back home in Ithaca. The film kind of bounces between the two of those, and we see the entire story unfold from the ending of the Battle of Troy all the way until Odysseus makes it home. The Odyssey is told in standard Nolan fashion, with the story being out of order. We are treated to several different storylines. We follow Odysseus as he is recounting a lot of the events of the story to Calypso as he slowly regains his memory and then eventually travels home. We also follow Penelope and Telemachus at Ithaca with the suitors, and then for a brief period of time Telemachus travels to Sparta to try and find more news about Odysseus, and we learn various bits and pieces of the story, and it is pieced together as the film progresses, which I think lends itself really well to Nolan's style. That worked incredibly well because it was really interesting knowing the full story. For those of us who have read The Odyssey and are familiar with the story, it was cool to see it in a different order and see how Nolan envisioned adapting it to the big screen. And since it is on the big screen, the cinematography is such an important part of it. And Hoyt van Hoytema's cinematography is so stunning. He is an incredible cinematographer. He really knows how to speak the language of film using cinematography, and The Odyssey is no exception. He wields the camera like a precise blade, and they're just these incredible shots where the camera is up close with the characters and we're seeing the emotion. We get these gorgeous wide shots that show off the stunning Mediterranean, all of the beautiful landscapes that are there, and all of the incredible sets that were built. But the way that he moves the camera just really works so well. It doesn't feel flashy. It doesn't feel like it's taking away from the story. I really didn't notice a lot of the camera work at all. There was one shot that, if you have seen it, you may not have even noticed it, but this shot when Robert Pattinson's character is trying to convince Penelope that he's the right suitor for her and he's right to be the king of Ithaca, and it is shot from behind the burial shroud that Penelope is weaving for her. The burial shroud that she is weaving, I don't remember who it's for, and the burial shroud is obscuring their faces, and the camera slowly pushes in on this interaction, and it just holds for 2.5 minutes, I think, while the two characters are talking, and it is a stunning shot to watch. It was so beautiful and so impactful. I think that Hoyt van Hoytema really understood what Christopher Nolan was going for with this film, and he really brought an artistic eye to The Odyssey and helped to bring it to the screen incredibly beautifully. Another area that really was striking and impactful was Ludwig Göransson's score. He is one of the greatest composers that is currently working today, and this score for The Odyssey was no exception. It's haunting, and I was thinking about why it's so haunting, and I think that the reason is because he takes these instruments that would have been around in ancient Greece, these strings and these wind instruments and the percussive instruments, and he mixes them with modern instruments and these modern sounds to create something that's entirely unique to the Odyssey. And it has this sound of longing that is what Odysseus is wanting. He is longing for home the entire movie, and the music really brings that out. It really digs into that aspect, and it was this piece of the movie that really grounded us, but also took us back and helped just immerse you in the world of ancient Greece. I wanted to share two specific moments that really stood out to me as just being these incredible moments that were so emotionally satisfying to me. The first one being the fact that we never hear the queen's name, Penelope's name, until Odysseus finally remembers it on Calypso's island. And it is this beautiful moment where you can hear the yearning in his voice as he yearns for his wife. And it is so impactful that that's the first time we get to actually hear her name. I think it's about halfway through the movie, and that moment just worked so well. The other moment had to do with Zendaya, and her casting was something that was very interesting to me, and I didn't really understand it when I first heard it, and it was something that I was a little hesitant on going into this film. I wasn't sure how I was going to like her in the role of Athena, and this is a big spoiler if you've not seen the movie yet, so definitely fast forward a minute or two if you don't want to hear this. But Zendaya is Athena. We continuously see her as Matt Damon talks to her and sees her throughout the course of this film, and it's revealed right at the third act that Zendaya was this young girl who was brutally killed during the burning of Troy. And it is set up to be this moment where, as the soldiers prepare to behead Zendaya, the statue of Athena is also beheaded. And so it's this incredible moment where you understand that Zendaya represents Odysseus's failure at Troy. He views it as this terrible, horrific thing that he's done, and so she is that consistent, constant reminder for him of what he has done, and it was such a powerful moment. I cannot confirm that that is what he was intending to do with Zendaya's character and potentially the character of Athena, but I think that that works really well, and if that is the case, then we never actually see any of the gods, and it grounds this film in this reality that I think works so well that we don't necessarily get to see. On a complete side tangent, if the animated film for Epic gets made sometime in the near future, these are going to be like two beautiful pillars that you can view separately, but will tell completely different sides to this story. One being a grounded live action version of the Odyssey that is told where there are no gods present, and then the other one, Epic the Musical, which would be an animated film which almost tells the story from the perspective of the gods. And I think that that would just be such a beautiful way to view this incredible epic poem that humanity has been telling for thousands of years. And so that kind of leads me into talking about the acting in this movie. How was the acting in the film? And I think that it all was really good. I particularly loved Robert Pattinson. He was just standout in this film. I hated his character so much, and normally I really like Robert Pattinson's character, but him as the villain in this was just absolutely stunning. I also thoroughly enjoyed Matt Damon. I thought that he really brought a vulnerable side to Odysseus that we don't normally see, and I thought he portrayed the character really well. The third person that I specifically want to call out is John Leguizamo. He plays Odysseus's servant and the one that he put in charge of Ithaca and taking care of Ithaca while Odysseus was away. And I really, really loved his character and the portrayal of his character. I thought it was incredibly well done. Over the last several months, as things have been coming out about this movie, there has been a lot of online discourse about people's fears for the film. I'll call them fears. A lot of people have been very vocally critical of this film, particularly in three aspects. The first aspect is casting choices, revolving around Lupita Nyong'o and a couple of other actors for the film. The second one was the historical accuracy of this film. And then the third one was the modern dialogue and accents that are being used in this movie. And I'm sure there are going to be some people who are on the fence about going to see this movie because of those concerns. I don't think that you should be concerned about this movie. Christopher Nolan is a master storyteller, and he does a phenomenal movie. And if you let yourself be drawn into the movie, none of those three concerns have any weight to them. If you let him tell this story and you let yourself be immersed in this world, it works incredibly well. It may not be what you particularly envisioned, but it is a beautiful film that is well worth watching. And so I just wanted to take a brief moment and address those fears, because I think that people are allowed to have fears and have valid concerns. And while it may not be everyone's cup of tea, I think that the movie surrounding it, the fact that one thing does not particularly jive with you, should not be enough to detract from what is otherwise a phenomenal movie that you would really, really enjoy. But there were definitely fears people had. There will be critiques that people have. And so what are my critiques? I have incredibly few critiques. And one of those, I'll just get it out of the way right now, is personal preference on some of the design choices. Specifically with the armor, I didn't love it back when I was watching the trailers and the promotional material for the film. But I found that it really didn't bother me. Watching this, I got past it incredibly easily. Once you just accept that that's how the story is going to be, it really isn't that big of an issue. I did have two casting choices that I thought were interesting and I didn't particularly love. The first was Tom Holland as Telemachus, and he grew on me as the movie progressed. I think this is my favorite role that I've seen him in so far. And I really, really liked his portrayal of Telemachus. And the second was Charlize Theron as Calypso. Maybe it's just because I've seen her in a few too many action films, but I just did not believe her as Calypso, and I think it would have been better if they had cast someone else in that role. Not that she didn't do a bad job. I thought she did a totally fine job. I just couldn't really believe her in that role. But it was a very minor thing. Those are my little hiccups with this film. The other one is that I thought the sound mixing was a little extreme in the theater, but that is, I understand that's Christopher Nolan's films. Like, if you go see it in IMAX, be prepared to have your eardrums blown out, because that will happen, and that's totally fine. These all come down to personal preference, basically. And so overall, this film is incredible, absolutely worth watching, and it's barely even worth mentioning the critiques, but I did want to mention them just for the sake of consistency. Christopher Nolan has a wide expanse of other movies that he has done, and so how does it stack up against them? Honestly, that is a really hard question to answer, and the reason for that is because this doesn't feel like any of Christopher Nolan's other movies. It feels a little bit like Oppenheimer, just kind of in the way that it's told and the fact that it's based in history. It's more of a historical piece, but this film feels wholly unique compared to the other films that Christopher Nolan does. Yes, it has similar storytelling aspects. It has different Christopher Nolan isms, but I think it's really cool to see Christopher Nolan trying something different that we haven't really seen him do before. And he really strikes gold with the Odyssey, and I would not mind seeing him do some other historical epics. Whether it's a biblical story, another legend, something else in mythology, I would be totally fine seeing him tackle another film set in one of those eras or a time period, because he definitely, you can see the love and the care and the attention that he is putting into every one of these films. The love and the attention that Christopher Nolan puts into his movies is present on every single frame of this film. And I think that's something that AI filmmaking will never be able to accomplish. That is something that I have been incredibly passionate about recently. I will continue to be very passionate about. And I think that this shows young audiences out there want reality. They want to see care and attention and the passion that someone has for something like the Odyssey, like what Christopher Nolan has for the Odyssey, because it is so apparent in this film. Every frame oozes passion, and in the best way possible, you want to go see this film again. I left the theater, and the first thought that I had, and the thought that continued to stick with me for the next several hours after I left the theater, was when can I go watch that again, because I want to experience it on the big screen again. And that is something that I don't think we will ever see from AI filmmaking, because AI filmmaking and the use of generative AI is, how do I get from point A to point B in the fastest way possible, as opposed to the Odyssey, which is, how do I tell the most beautiful story and let an audience go from point A to point B regardless of the time and the energy involved. Because there was a lot of time, energy, and expenditure involved from Universal, from everyone in the cast and crew. This film cost a whopping $250 million to make, and supposedly it's another $125 million in marketing to get this film out there. That means that this film is going to have to make somewhere between $600 and $700 million back in order just for Universal to break even on it, which is an absurd number. That's a crazy amount that you typically see with large-scale Avengers films. You'll see that with the Avatar franchise. So the fact that this film needs to make so much money is a testament to how much Universal really trusts Christopher Nolan. And I think that is such a refreshing thing to see a studio at the magnitude of Universal basically give Christopher Nolan a blank check and say, go make something incredible. And then they just sat back and let him take the reins. And that, I think, was absolutely the right thing to do, because you can tell this film is going to make so much money. The film made over $1 million a year before it was going to come out, based off of a 30-second trailer. People bought IMAX tickets and sold out theaters a year before this film came out. This film is going to do incredibly well, and it is well deserved, because you can tell that this film has a lot of passion and a lot of love behind it. And Universal, Christopher Nolan, and the rest of the cast and the crew should be rewarded for all of the effort that they have put into making this film for us. I thoroughly enjoyed this film. I would give the Odyssey a 9.5 out of 10, which is my rating for it. It is a movie that deserves to be watched on the biggest screen you can afford. If that means you need to wait several weeks for it to come out on streaming, then wait for it to come out on streaming. If you can only afford to go to a matinee performance in the morning, then do that. If you can afford to go watch it on an IMAX screen, please go watch it there, because you will not be disappointed. This is a film for the ages and is going to be one of the top contenders for me for best film of the year. So let's talk about The Odyssey. The Odyssey is a movie that is going to change the game. audiences are going to expect more. Hopefully, studios will take the right message away from this, that audiences want good films. They want original films. They want films by filmmakers who are passionate about the films that they are going to make. Directors like Nolan are going to continue to demonstrate how incredible literature from the past can be adapted into some of the greatest films of all time. So have you seen the Odyssey? If so, what did you think of it? Please let me know in the comments below. I love reading your guys' comments. Check out my film, Letting Go of Jack, which is available to watch on streaming. And I would love for you to take a look at a film that I was super passionate about making, and follow me for movies and more.